The darkness of space split open like tearing fabric as the jump point flared to life. Ambassador Zixthar watched from his diplomatic vessel, his multiple eyes blinking in sequence as he waited for the human delegation to arrive. The Galactic Council had sent him to greet Earth's representatives, expecting to see small shuttles carrying nervous primitives who barely understood faster-than-light travel. His species, the Keltharians, had done this ceremony hundreds of times over the centuries. It was always the same, but what emerged from the jump point made Zixthar's breathing tubes constrict in shock. The ship was massive, 3 kilometers of dark metal and angular design, bristling with structures that could only be weapons. It moved with surprising grace for something so large, its hull catching the light of distant stars. The ambassador's sensors screamed warnings as they tried to analyze the vessel's power signature. The readings made no sense. The fusion reactors powering the ship burned hotter than anything the Keltharians had ever seen. "This cannot be correct," Zixthar whispered to his crew. "Run the scans again." On the bridge of the UNSC Titan's Reach, Commander Jake Morrison stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the alien vessel through the main view screen. The Keltharian ship looked delicate compared to their own, all smooth curves and decorative panels. It reminded him of a sailing yacht next to an aircraft carrier. "They're hailing us, Commander," Lieutenant Amy Walsh said from her station. She adjusted her headset, listening to the translation software work through the alien language. "They sound confused. Maybe scared." "Let them wait a moment," Morrison said. His eyes moved across the various displays showing the ship's status. Every system glowed green. The weapons were charged but not targeted. The shields hummed at standby power. Everything was ready. "Where's the captain?" "Observation deck," Walsh replied. He wanted to see their reaction in person. Captain Greg Bennett stood in the observation deck, a room with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered an unobstructed view of space. He could see the Keltharian vessel in the distance, tiny against the stars. Behind him, Chief Engineer Lisa Hayes checked a data pad, monitoring the ship's performance. "All systems running smooth, Captain," she said. "The reactors are barely working. We could triple our power output if needed." Bennett nodded but said nothing. He knew what the aliens were thinking right now. They were looking at the Titan's Reach and realizing that everything they thought they knew about humanity was wrong. Earth had been watched for decades, studied from a distance. The Galactic Council had reports describing humans as primitive, barely capable of leaving their own star system. Those reports were carefully crafted lies. "Send my compliments to Commander Morrison," Bennett said. "Tell him to accept the hail. Let's not keep our guests waiting any longer." The communication link crackled to life, and Ambassador Zixthar's face appeared on screens throughout the Titan's Reach. The Keltharian looked like a cross between an octopus and a bird, with a beak-like mouth and tentacles that moved constantly as he spoke. "Greetings. Greetings to the human delegation," Zixthar said, his voice translated into English by sophisticated AI. "I am Ambassador Zixthar of the Keltharian Concordat, speaking on behalf of the Galactic Council. We welcome Earth to the community of spacefaring species. However, I must confess confusion. Our records indicated you would arrive in smaller vessels. The ship you have brought is unexpected." Commander Morrison smiled slightly. "Ambassador, I'm Commander Jake Morrison, Executive Officer of the Titan's Reach. We appreciate your welcome. As for our ship, we wanted to make a good first impression. I hope we haven't startled you." "Startled." Zixthar's tentacles writhed. "Commander, your vessel's power signature exceeds that of our entire fleet. Your weapon systems are based on principles that our scientists consider theoretical at best. Startled does not begin to describe my current state. Captain Bennett will explain everything," Morrison said. "He's on his way to the bridge now. In the meantime, would you like to discuss the details of our meeting? I understand there are protocols for first contact." While Morrison spoke with the ambassador, Captain Bennett made his way through the ship's corridors. The Titan's Reach was designed to be efficient rather than comfortable. Gray metal walls, harsh lighting, and constant mechanical sounds. It felt military, purposeful. The crew he passed snapped to attention as he walked by. Most were young, in their 20s and 30s. Earth's best and brightest trained for this moment. The bridge was the ship's nerve center, a circular room with workstations arranged around a central command chair. Large screens displayed everything from weapon status to star charts. Captain Bennett took his seat and nodded to Morrison. "I'll take it from here, Commander." Bennett's face appeared on Zixthar's screen, replacing Morrison. The ambassador studied the human carefully. Bennett looked to be in his 50s, with gray hair and calm eyes. He wore a dark blue uniform with simple insignia. Nothing flashy, nothing aggressive. But there was steel in his posture. "Ambassador Zixthar," Bennett said. "I'm Captain Greg Bennett, commanding officer of this vessel. On behalf of the United Earth Space Command and our planet's people, I thank you for this meeting. We're eager to begin formal relations with the Galactic Council." "Captain Bennett," Zixthar said carefully, "your ship is remarkable. May I ask how Earth, a species we believe to be in the early stages of space travel, has produced such a vessel?" "With respect, Ambassador, your information about Earth is outdated. We've had functional warp drives for 30 years. We've been building ships in our asteroid belt for 15. The Titan's Reach is our first deep space warship, but she's not our last. 4 more vessels of similar design are currently under construction." The silence that followed was heavy. Zixthar's tentacles had stopped moving entirely, which his crew knew meant extreme shock. This changes many things," the ambassador finally said. "The Council's projections suggested Earth would require at least 2 centuries to reach this level of technology." "How did you accomplish this so quickly?" Captain Bennett leaned forward slightly. "Ambassador, humanity has certain advantages. We're good at solving problems, especially when our survival depends on it. We studied every probe your council sent to observe us. We learned from your technology, and we worked very hard. Now we're ready to join the galactic community, but not as children seeking guidance. We come as equals." "Equals," Zixthar repeated the word slowly. "Captain Bennett, you must understand. The Galactic Council has existed for over 10,000 years. There are protocols, hierarchies, expectations. New species typically enter at the lowest levels and work their way up over centuries. Your ship, impressive as it is, does not change millennia of tradition. With respect, Ambassador, it does." Bennett's voice remained polite but firm. "Earth will not accept a subordinate position simply because we're new. We seek partnership, not permission. The Titan's Reach is here to demonstrate that humanity can defend itself and contribute to galactic security. We hope the Council will welcome us as partners." Dr. Paul Martinez, who had been listening from his station, smiled slightly. The captain was being diplomatic, but the message was clear. Humanity wasn't asking for approval. They were announcing their arrival. Zixthar seemed to understand this too. "Captain, I will need to consult with the Council. This situation is beyond my authority to address. May I suggest we proceed to the Nexus Point? That is our central station where the Council convenes. They will want to meet you in person." "We would be honored," Bennett said. "The Titan's Reach is ready to depart at your convenience." As the communication ended, Lieutenant Walsh turned to Commander Morrison. "Do you think they'll accept us?" Morrison watched the Keltharian ship on the view screen. "They don't have much choice. We're here, we're powerful, and we're not going away. The galaxy's about to change, whether they like it or not." Captain Bennett stood and walked to the main view screen, staring out at the stars. Somewhere out there was the Nexus Point, where humanity's fate would be decided, but Bennett wasn't worried. The Titan's Reach had spoken, and the galaxy was listening. The Nexus Point hung in space like a jewel made of metal and light. It was enormous, a space station the size of a small moon, housing millions of beings from dozens of different species. Towers and docking arms stretched out in all directions, and ships of every imaginable design floated around it like insects around a lamp. Commander Jake Morrison watched it grow larger on the view screen as the Titan's Reach approached. "Never thought I'd see something like this," Lieutenant Amy Walsh said softly. She stood beside Morrison, studying the station's design. "How old did they say it was?" 5,000 years, Morrison replied. "They've been adding to it constantly. Each species that joins the Council builds their own section. It's supposed to represent unity and cooperation." "Looks impressive," Walsh admitted. "But I wonder how much of that unity is real." The Titans Reach docked at a special berth reserved for visiting dignitaries. The station's docking systems had to be modified on the spot because no one had expected a ship so large. As the crew prepared to disembark, Captain Bennett gave final instructions to his senior officers. "Commander Morrison, you'll lead our delegation to the Council chambers. Take Lieutenant Walsh and Dr. Martinez with you. I'll remain on the ship and participate via holographic link. They need to see that we're not abandoning our vessel." "Understood, sir," Morrison said. What's our approach? Respectful, but firm. We're here to join as equals, not to bow and scrape. If they push back, we hold our ground. The walk through the Nexus Point was an experience Morrison would never forget. The corridors were vast, designed to accommodate species of all sizes. He saw beings that towered 3 meters tall walking past creatures no bigger than housecats. Some aliens looked almost human, while others were so strange that Morrison's brain struggled to process what he was seeing. The air smelled of 1,000 different worlds, and the sound was a constant buzz of languages and translator devices. Lieutenant Walsh kept close to Morrison, her eyes wide with wonder. Dr. Paul Martinez walked on his other side, already taking notes on his data pad about the various technologies he observed. "This is incredible," Martinez whispered. "Some of these species are thousands of years more advanced than us. Look at that gravity manipulation system. And those ships outside use some kind of exotic matter for fuel. We could learn so much here." "If they let us," Morrison reminded him. "Remember, we're on trial here." The council chamber was even more impressive than the station itself. It was a massive amphitheater that could hold thousands of beings. Seats rose in circular tiers around a central floor where speakers would address the assembly. At the highest point sat the High Council, 7 beings from the most powerful species. In the center of these 7 was High Counselor Vrekthorn. Vrekthorn was a Vrexian, a reptilian species that had dominated the galaxy for over 3,000 years. He was tall and covered in dark green scales that seemed to absorb light. His eyes were yellow with vertical pupils, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "The Council recognizes the delegation from Earth," Vrekthorn announced. The translator made his words sound formal and cold. "You may approach and state your petition." Commander Morrison walked to the center of the chamber floor. He could feel thousands of alien eyes watching him. Some looked curious, others hostile, and many simply bored. He cleared his throat and began to speak. "Honorable members of the Galactic Council, I am Commander Jake Morrison of the United Earth Space Command. We come before you seeking membership in this great assembly of civilizations. Earth has achieved faster-than-light travel, established colonies beyond our home system, and developed the technology necessary to participate in galactic affairs. We ask to join as partners in maintaining peace and prosperity throughout known space." There was a moment of silence. Then the chamber erupted in discussion. Aliens turned to each other, their various languages creating a wall of sound. Some seemed excited, others angry. Morrison stood quietly, waiting for order to be restored. High Counselor Vrekthorn raised one clawed hand, and silence fell immediately. "The Council has reviewed your petition, Commander Morrison. We have also reviewed scans of your vessel, the Titan's Reach. There are concerns." "What concerns?" Morrison asked. "Your ship is heavily armed. The weapon systems you possess are aggressive in nature. You have railguns capable of accelerating projectiles to relativistic speeds. You have plasma cannons that draw power directly from fusion reactions. You have point defense systems with reaction times that suggest military AI control. These are not the tools of a peaceful species." Morrison felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his voice calm. "With respect, Counselor, every species here possesses military capabilities. The difference is that we're honest about ours. We don't hide our strength behind diplomatic language." A ripple of reaction went through the chamber. Some species made sounds that might have been laughter. Others looked shocked at Morrison's directness. Vrekthorn's scales seemed to darken. "You are new here, Commander. You do not understand how things work. Species that join the Council do so at the lowest levels. They prove themselves over centuries. They earn respect through patience and compliance. Your ship, your attitude, these things suggest you expect special treatment." "We expect equal treatment," Morrison corrected. "Nothing more, nothing less." Before Vrekthorn could respond, Captain Bennett's holographic image appeared in the chamber. It was projected from the Titan's Reach, and it was life-sized, standing beside Morrison as though Bennett himself were present. "Counselor Vrekthorn," Bennett said, "perhaps I can clarify Earth's position. We understand that this council has existed for thousands of years. We respect that history. But we also know our own worth. Humanity has fought wars, survived disasters, and built civilizations that rose and fell before we even knew other species existed. We've learned hard lessons about power and how it's used. We're not naive children who need to be taught basic concepts of civilization. Then what are you, Captain? Breckthorn asked. There was something dangerous in his tone. We're a species that values freedom above all else. We've seen what happens when power is concentrated in the hands of a few. We've watched empires fall because they became arrogant. We come to this council not seeking dominance but refusing subjugation. If that makes us difficult, so be it. The chamber erupted again, louder this time. Lieutenant Walsh, standing at the edge of the speaking floor, noticed something interesting. Many of the smaller species, those sitting in the lower tiers of the chamber, were nodding or making gestures that seemed like agreement. It was the larger, more powerful species that looked angry. A member of the High Council spoke up. A being, whose translator identified her as a representative from the Keltharian Concordat. Captain Bennett, your words are bold. But boldness without wisdom leads to conflict. How do we know Earth will not use its military might to threaten others? Captain Bennett turned to face her. You have Ambassador Zixthar's report. He met us first. Did we threaten him? Did we make demands? We came peacefully to a meeting we were invited to. The Titan's reach carries weapons because the universe is dangerous, not because we seek war. But we will defend ourselves if necessary. That's not a threat. It's a statement of fact. Dr. Martinez stepped forward, joining Morrison and Bennett's hologram. If I may add something, he said nervously. Earth has scientific knowledge to share. Our approach to fusion technology is unique. We've achieved efficiency rates that might interest council researchers. We're not just here to take. We want to contribute. This seemed to calm some of the tension. Several council members leaned forward with interest. Science was a neutral topic, something all species valued. High Councillor Vreckthorn consulted with the other members of the High Council. Their discussion was private, blocked from the chamber's translation systems. Finally, Vreckthorn turned back to the humans. The council will vote on your petition. However, given the unusual circumstances of your arrival, we propose provisional membership. You will have 1 year to demonstrate that you can operate within council guidelines. During this time, your military will be subject to review and possible regulation. Your colonies will be monitored. Your trade will be restricted to approved partners. After 1 year, we will vote again on full membership. Do you accept these terms? Captain Bennett looked at Morrison. The commander gave a slight nod. They had expected something like this. We accept provisional membership, Bennett said. But we do not accept restrictions on our military that are not equally applied to all species. If Rexian ships can patrol neutral zones, so can ours. If Keltharian vessels can be armed, so can ours. Equal treatment, Counselor. That's all we ask. Vreckthorn's eyes narrowed, but he nodded slowly. The vote will proceed. The voting system was complex, with different species having different weights based on their contributions to the Council. But the result was clear enough. Humanity was granted provisional membership by a narrow margin. Many species voted yes out of curiosity or hope. Others voted no out of fear or allegiance to the Rexians. But the yes votes won. As the human delegation left the chamber, Lieutenant Walsh noticed several smaller species approaching them discreetly. They passed data. 6 months had passed since humanity joined the Galactic Council. The colony on New Terra was growing steadily, with 5,000 settlers building homes and farms on a world that felt almost like Earth. The sky was a bit more purple, and the grass had a blue tint, but it was habitable and beautiful. Commander Jake Morrison stood on a hill overlooking the main settlement, watching construction drones assemble new buildings. Beautiful, isn't it? Lieutenant Amy Walsh said, joining him. She had been spending most of her time shuttling between New Terra and the Nexus Point, building relationships with other species. Hard to believe we're really here living on another world. It would be more beautiful if we didn't have Rexian warships watching us constantly, Morrison replied. He pointed to the sky where, invisible to the naked eye but clear on sensors, 3 Rexian vessels maintained a surveillance orbit. They've been there for 2 weeks. Just watching. Captain Bennett says they're trying to intimidate us. It's working, Morrison admitted. Not on us, but on the colonists. People are nervous. They left Earth for a better life, not to be caught in the middle of a Cold War. Back on the Titan's Reach, which remained in orbit above New Terra, Captain Greg Bennett was dealing with more immediate concerns. Lieutenant Kevin Blake, his security chief, had just delivered disturbing news. Someone's been trying to hack our systems, Blake said, displaying data on a screen. Very sophisticated attempts. They're probing our defenses, looking for weaknesses. The attacks always come when we're near Vrexian vessels, but they're routing through multiple sources to hide their origin. Can you stop them? Bennett asked. So far, yes. Our AI security is better than they expected. But they're learning. Each attack is more refined than the last. Blake pulled up another display. There's more, Captain. 3 of our cargo ships have been intercepted by Vrexian fighters in the past month. Each time, the Vrexians claim they were conducting routine inspections. Each time they delayed our ships for hours, scanning everything, questioning the crews. It's harassment, Bennett said. They're testing how much we'll tolerate. What do we do about it? Bennett was quiet for a moment, staring at the star charts on his screen. For now, we document everything. Every intrusion attempt, every intercept, every aggressive action. We're building a case. When the time comes, we'll need evidence. On Earth, Admiral Frank Carter watched the situation unfold from his office in Geneva. The United Earth Space Command headquarters was buzzing with activity as 5 new warships neared completion. The Admiral was a veteran who had seen combat during the corporate wars 30 years earlier, back when Earth's nations had finally unified. He understood that peace was fragile and that strength was often the only thing that prevented conflict. His chief of staff, Colonel Ryan Tucker, entered with fresh intelligence reports. Sir, we're picking up increased Vrexian military activity near our borders. They're conducting what they call training exercises, but the formations and movements suggest they're practicing blockade tactics. How many ships? Carter asked. At least 30 capital ships with twice that number in support vessels. It's the largest Vrexian fleet movement in 50 years. Carter stood and walked to the window overlooking the compound. They're preparing for something. The question is what? An actual attack, or just more intimidation? Our analysts think they're trying to force us into making a mistake, Tucker said. If they can provoke us into firing the first shot, they can justify removing us from the council. Then we don't give them that satisfaction, Carter decided. But we also don't back down. Order the Liberty's Edge and Defiant Storm to join the Titan's Reach. We'll show them we can match their escalation. The crisis point came 3 weeks later, in a remote asteroid field far from any inhabited systems. A human mining operation called Outpost 7 had been established there, extracting rare minerals needed for ship construction. 47 miners and their families lived and worked in the facility, which was carved into a large asteroid. It was hard work but profitable, and the miners were pioneers in the truest sense. On a normal day, Outpost 7 would have detected the approaching ships with plenty of time to alert the authorities. But these ships were running silent, using stealth systems that masked their signatures. By the time the mining facility's sensors picked them up, it was too late. The attack was brutal and quick. Missiles struck the facility's power generators first, plunging everything into darkness. Then plasma cannons melted through the hull, venting atmosphere into space. The raiders moved with military precision, destroying everything: the mining equipment, the living quarters, the communication arrays. When it was over, 47 people were dead, and Outpost 7 was nothing but twisted metal and frozen corpses. The news reached Captain Bennett 12 hours later, delivered by a cargo ship that had found the wreckage. The captain sat in his ready room, reading the report 3 times, his hands trembling slightly with controlled rage. Who did this? He asked Lieutenant Blake, who stood before his desk. The ship's signatures were scrambled, but our AI reconstructed partial data from the wreckage. The vessels were using Vrexian-manufactured weapons and engines. We can't prove the Vrexians themselves did it, but the technology definitely came from their empire. Could it have been pirates using stolen tech? Blake shook his head. The attack pattern was military-grade. Whoever did this had professional training. My guess is one of the Vrexian client species, probably acting under orders but with deniability built in. Captain Bennett stood and walked to his window, looking out at the stars. "Get Commander Morrison up here and contact Earth. Admiral Carter needs to know about this immediately." When Morrison arrived, Bennett laid out the situation. The Council will deny any involvement. They'll call it a pirate attack and offer meaningless condolences, but we both know what this really is. "A warning," Morrison said quietly. "They're telling us that if we don't fall in line, they can hurt us anywhere, anytime." "Exactly. And they chose a target they thought we'd accept losing. Just miners far from home, no military value. They expected us to file a protest and move on. What do we do instead?" Bennett's expression hardened. "We investigate, officially. I don't care what the Council says about jurisdiction. 47 of our people are dead and someone is going to answer for it." The Titan's Reach jumped to the Outpost 7 location within hours. The sight that greeted them was devastating. The asteroid that had housed the mining facility was scarred and broken, still venting frozen gases into space. Bodies floated among the debris, preserved by the cold vacuum. Captain Bennett ordered recovery operations to begin immediately, treating each victim with respect and dignity. Dr. Paul Martinez led the forensic investigation, working with the ship's AI to analyze every piece of evidence. He worked for 3 days straight, barely sleeping, driven by anger at what had been done. When he finally compiled his report, the evidence was damning. The weapon signatures match Vrexian military-grade systems, Martinez told Bennett and Morrison. "Not just similar, exact matches. We also recovered data fragments from the facility's destroyed servers. They show Vrexian military vessels in this sector on the day of the attack, despite the fact that this area was supposed to be off-limits to all Council military forces." "Can we prove coordination?" Bennett asked. "Not absolutely, but the circumstantial evidence is overwhelming. The timing, the location, the weapon types, all of it points to a planned operation coordinated with Vrexian fleet movements." Captain Bennett made his decision. "Compile everything into a formal report. We're taking this to the Council and we're making it public. Let the galaxy see what really happened here." The report was transmitted to the Nexus Point and simultaneously released to every species with communication capabilities. Within hours, it was being discussed across the galaxy. The images of dead miners, the technical analysis of the weapons used, the timeline showing Vrexian vessels nearby, all of it painted a damning picture. High Counselor Vreckthorn responded swiftly, calling an emergency session. When Captain Bennett's hologram appeared in the Council chambers, the Vrexian was waiting. "Captain Bennett, you have made serious accusations against this Council and the Vrexian Empire. You have violated protocol by conducting an unauthorized investigation in neutral space. You have released sensitive information without approval. These are grave breaches of Council law. 47 of my people are dead," Bennett said coldly. "I don't care about protocol. I care about justice. Justice will be served, but through proper channels. Your evidence is circumstantial. Vrexian vessels patrol many areas. Their weapons technology has been stolen by pirates before. You prove nothing with these scans and timelines." Lieutenant Walsh, who was present in the chambers representing Earth, stood and addressed the assembly. "Counselor, if this was truly a random pirate attack, then surely the Council will support a full investigation. Open access to all military records, testimony from ship captains who were in the area, full transparency. Unless there's something to hide?" The challenge was clear, and many of the smaller species began voicing support for Walsh's proposal. They had read Earth's report. They had seen the evidence, and many of them had their own grievances against the 5 human warships floated in formation, their dark hulls catching the light of a distant red sun. The Titan's Reach held the center position, flanked by the Liberty's Edge and Defiant Storm on one side, the Iron Will and Sentinel's Watch on the other. Together, they represented more military power than most species possessed in their entire fleets. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the Titan's Reach bridge, coordinating defensive positions with the other ship captains. "This is quite a sight," Captain Greg Bennett said, standing beside Morrison. 5 of humanity's finest ships all in one place. Makes you wonder if we're being smart or stupid." "Both, probably," Morrison replied with a slight smile. "But we're committed now. No turning back." Admiral Frank Carter had arrived from Earth 3 days earlier aboard the Liberty's Edge. He was a solid, practical man in his 60s, with iron-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much combat. His presence brought authority to the situation, but also raised the stakes. If something went wrong now, it wouldn't be just Captain Bennett's career on the line. It would be war. The Admiral stepped onto the Titan's Reach Bridge, accompanied by his Chief of Staff, Colonel Ryan Tucker. Bennett and Morrison snapped quick salutes, which Carter returned. "Status report," Carter said, getting straight to business. "All 5 ships at full readiness," Morrison replied. "Weapons charged, shields at standby, crews at battle stations. We've detected increased Vrexian activity on the borders. They're massing forces." "How many?" 30 capital ships confirmed, with at least 60 support vessels. "It's the largest Vrexian fleet we've ever seen assembled." Carter nodded slowly. "They're trying to intimidate us. Classic power projection, show overwhelming force and hope the enemy backs down without a fight." "Will it work?" Colonel Tucker asked. "Depends," Carter said. "Captain Bennett, what's the mood on your ship?" "Determined, sir. We buried our dead yesterday. The crew attended a memorial service for the 47 people killed at Outpost 7. Nobody wants to back down now. It would feel like betraying them. Good, because backing down isn't an option." Carter pulled up a star chart on the main display. "Earth Command has given me full authority here. If the Vrexians attack, we fight. If they try to blockade us, we break through. We're not leaving until this is resolved." On the Nexus Point, the Galactic Council was in chaos. High Counselor Vrekthorn had called 3 emergency sessions in 2 days, each one more heated than the last. The smaller species were demanding investigations not just into the Outpost 7 attack, but into decades of Vrexian military operations. Old grievances were being aired publicly for the first time in centuries. Lieutenant Amy Walsh attended these sessions as Earth's representative. She watched as species after species stood up to challenge Vrexian dominance. The Patharians, the Keltharians, even some of the mid-tier powers were questioning the Council's structure. "This is unprecedented," Ambassador Zixthar whispered to Walsh during a recess. His tentacles moved in patterns that suggested excitement, mixed with fear. "I have attended council sessions for 40 years, and I have never seen the smaller species speak so boldly." "Change was coming eventually," Walsh replied. "We just accelerated it." "Perhaps. But acceleration can be dangerous. The Vrexians will not give up power easily. They may decide that making an example of humanity is worth the political cost." Supreme Fleet Commander Kalneth stood in his command center, reviewing tactical displays. The Vrexian military had been the dominant force in the galaxy for 3,000 years. They had never lost a major conflict. Their ships were powerful, their crews experienced, their tactics proven through countless encounters, and now some upstart species that had barely left its own star system was challenging them. It was intolerable. "Admiral, the fleet is ready," his second-in-command reported. "All ships at full battle readiness. We await your orders." Kalneth studied the display showing the 5 human ships. They were impressive, he admitted grudgingly. Their power signatures suggested technology that was crude but effective. Humanity had taken old fusion reactor designs and refined them to incredible efficiency. Their weapons were simple but devastating. Railguns that could punch through shields with kinetic energy alone. Plasma cannons that burned hot enough to melt armor. Point defense systems with reaction times that suggested sophisticated AI control. But they were still just 5 ships against his 30. The mathematics were clear. "We will give them one more chance to withdraw peacefully," Kalneth decided. "If they refuse, we will use minimum necessary force to disable their vessels and take their crews into custody. The Council will then have grounds to expel Earth from membership and forbid them from Council space. And if they fight back harder than expected?" Kalneth's expression hardened. "Then we destroy them and tell the galaxy that they fired first. Who will question us? We are the Vrexian Empire. We have maintained peace for millennia. No one will believe that 5 small human ships could threaten us." Back on the Titan's Reach, sensors detected the moment the Vrexian fleet entered the system. 30 massive warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their weapons already charged, shields already raised. They moved with the confidence of a species that had never known defeat. "Here we go," Morrison said quietly. Captain Bennett stood and walked to the center of the bridge. All hands, this is the captain. The Vrexian fleet has arrived. Remember your training. Remember why we're here. We're not looking for a fight, but we won't run from one either. Stay focused, stay professional, and trust your crewmates. Bennett out. Admiral Carter opened a channel to all 5 human ships. This is Admiral Carter to all vessels. Maintain formation. Do not charge weapons or raise shields unless ordered. We show readiness but not aggression. Let them make the first move. The Vrexian fleet approached slowly, using their superior numbers to create a sense of overwhelming presence. They formed a wall of ships 3 times the size of the human formation, close enough to be threatening but not quite close enough to be in immediate danger. Then Supreme Fleet Commander Kalneth's face appeared on every human ship's view screen. The Vrexian looked impressive in his military uniform, his scales polished to a high shine, his yellow eyes cold and calculating. Human fleet. This is Supreme Fleet Commander Kalneth of the Vrexian Imperial Navy. You are in violation of Galactic Council directives. You have been ordered to withdraw from this sector. You have refused. This ends now. You have 1 hour to power down your vessels and prepare to be boarded. Your crews will be taken into custody pending council review. If you refuse, we will disable your ships by force. Admiral Carter stepped forward, his image projecting back to the Vrexian fleet. Commander Kalneth, this is Admiral Frank Carter of the United Earth Space Command. We are conducting a legitimate investigation into the murder of 47 of our citizens. We have violated no laws and committed no crimes. We will not be intimidated and we will not surrender our ships. Then you choose to be enemies of the Council, Kalneth replied. No. We choose to demand justice from the Council. There's a difference. Kalneth's expression showed something that might have been respect or might have been contempt. It was hard to tell with alien features. You have courage, Admiral. Foolish courage, but courage nonetheless. Your 5 ships against my 30. This will not end well for you. Maybe, Carter said. Or maybe you'll discover that humanity doesn't measure strength just by counting ships. The hour began ticking down. On both sides, crews prepared for battle. Weapon systems were triple-checked. Shield generators hummed at maximum readiness. Captains reviewed tactical plans and contingencies. Dr. Paul Martinez, aboard the Titan's Reach, worked frantically to ensure the ship's AI systems were optimized for combat. If fighting started, those AI systems would give humanity crucial advantages in reaction time and accuracy. Lieutenant Kevin Blake reviewed security protocols, ensuring that if the ship was boarded, the Vrexians would face lethal resistance at every corridor. The Titan's Reach had been designed with internal defense in mind, with blast doors, automated turrets, and maze-like passages that would make any boarding action costly. As the minutes passed, Lieutenant Walsh worked behind the scenes at the nexus point. She reached out to every friendly species representative, coordinating a political response to parallel the military standoff. If violence erupted, humanity needed allies who would speak up, who would demand investigations, who would prevent the Vrexians from controlling the narrative. The smaller species responded. Messages of support flooded in, discreet but meaningful. The Ptharians promised to call for emergency council sessions. The Keltharians offered to share their sensor data showing Vrexian military movements. Even some of the mid-tier powers who had stayed neutral until now began questioning the Vrexian actions publicly. With 30 minutes remaining, Captain Bennett made a decision. He opened a channel not to Kalneth but to the entire galaxy. Broadcasting on all frequencies, he began to speak. To all species of the Galactic Council, this is Captain Greg Bennett of Earth. In a few minutes, the Vrexian fleet may open fire on our ships. They claim this is about Council authority and following orders. But we all know what this is really about. It's about power. It's about one species deciding. 3 months had passed since the standoff. The galaxy was changing in ways both subtle and profound. The nexus point buzzed with activity as the Galactic Council worked through reforms that would have been unthinkable a year earlier. High Counselor Vrekthorn sat in his private chambers reviewing the latest proposals. His scales had lost some of their luster and he looked tired. They are dismantling everything we built, his aide said, reviewing the documents. Power-sharing agreements, military oversight committees, equal voting rights for all species regardless of size or strength. The Vrexian Empire will lose most of its authority. Vrekthorn was quiet for a long moment. "Perhaps it is time we did," he finally said. "I have ruled for 60 years, and in that time I believed we were keeping peace through strength." But Captain Bennett was right about one thing. Fear is not peace. It is just the absence of war. They are not the same thing. The investigation into the Outpost 7 attack had been thorough and damning. The evidence trail led directly to a Vrexian client species acting under orders from elements within the Vrexian military. Supreme Fleet Commander Kalneth himself was implicated, though he denied direct knowledge. The scandal had shaken the Vrexian Empire to its core. Kalneth had been removed from command and was facing trial. The military structure that had dominated the galaxy for 3,000 years was being reformed. Commander Jake Morrison, now promoted to captain and given command of the newly commissioned UNSC Resolute Dawn, patrolled sectors that had been neglected for decades. These were regions far from major trade routes, where smaller species lived and where piracy had long been a problem. With the Vrexian fleets distracted by internal reforms, someone needed to fill the security gap. Humanity had volunteered. "We're getting good at this," his executive officer, Lieutenant Danny Park, said as they completed another patrol sweep. "The locals actually seem happy to see us." "That's because we're not here to tell them what to do," Morrison replied. "We're here to help." It's a novel concept in this part of the galaxy. Back on the Nexus Point, Lieutenant Amy Walsh had been confirmed as Earth's official ambassador to the Galactic Council. She worked 18-hour days, coordinating with dozens of species to draft the new council charter. The document that was emerging would reshape galactic civilization for generations to come. The Keltharian ambassador Zixthar had become one of her closest allies. He visited her office one afternoon, his tentacles moving in patterns that suggested both exhaustion and satisfaction. "We have done it, Ambassador Walsh," he said. "The charter will be voted on next week. All projections show it will pass with overwhelming support." "It's not perfect," Walsh cautioned. "There are compromises we had to make. Some species still have concerns. Nothing is perfect, but it is better. Much better than what came before. Your species did this. In less than 2 years, Earth has changed the galaxy more than any species has in 1,000 years." Walsh smiled. "We had help. A lot of help. We couldn't have done this without the Keltharians, the Petharians, and dozens of others who were brave enough to speak up. Perhaps. But you were the ones who started it. You were the ones who said no when everyone expected submission. That made all the difference." Admiral Frank Carter had returned to Earth to oversee the continued expansion of humanity's fleet. The UNSC now had 23 capital ships operational, with 15 more under construction. But the nature of these ships was changing. The latest designs included advanced sensor arrays for search and rescue, medical facilities for humanitarian missions, and cargo bays optimized for disaster relief. Humanity was building a fleet that could fight if necessary, but whose primary purpose was to help and protect. Captain Greg Bennett remained aboard the Titan's Reach, which had become a symbol throughout the galaxy. Other species asked to tour the ship, to meet the crew, to understand what made humanity different. Bennett welcomed these visitors, though he always reminded them that there was nothing magical about humans. They were just a species that valued freedom and was willing to defend it. Dr. Paul Martinez had become famous among scientific communities across the galaxy. His research on fusion reactor efficiency had been shared freely with other species, and several civilizations were already implementing improved designs. He worked now with alien colleagues, combining Earth's practical engineering approach with the theoretical knowledge of species thousands of years older. The collaboration was producing breakthroughs neither could have achieved alone. On Earth itself, life had changed dramatically. The successful integration into the Galactic Council meant access to markets, technologies, and knowledge that would have taken centuries to develop independently. Earth's economy was booming. New colonies were being established on Council-approved worlds. Human students were attending universities on alien planets, while alien scholars came to Earth to study humanity's unique approach to problem-solving. But not everything was celebration. The families of the 47 miners killed at Outpost 7 had received justice, but justice didn't bring back the dead. A memorial had been built on New Terra, 47 pillars of polished stone, each bearing a name. Captain Bennett visited whenever his duties brought him to the colony. He would stand before the memorial and remember the people whose deaths had sparked a revolution. The vote on the new Council Charter took place on a day that, would be remembered as a turning point in galactic history. The amphitheater was packed, with representatives from every member species present. Lieutenant Walsh sat in Earth's designated section, her heart pounding as the final tally was calculated. High Counselor Vrekthorn stood to announce the results. The Nexus Accord has been approved by a vote of 81 species in favor, 7 against, and 3 abstaining. By the authority vested in this council, I declare the accord ratified. It will take effect immediately. The chamber erupted in celebration. Species that had never had a real voice in galactic affairs were cheering. The smaller civilizations that had lived under Vrexian dominance for centuries were finally equal partners. It wasn't perfect equality, and there would be challenges implementing the reforms, but it was a start. Vrekthorn raised his hand for silence. When the chamber quieted, he spoke again. I wish to make a personal statement. I have served as High Counselor for 60 years. In that time, I believed I was serving the cause of peace and stability. But I failed to see that stability built on inequality and fear is false stability. It took a young species, one we initially dismissed as primitive, to show us this truth. Therefore, I am announcing my retirement as High Counselor. The Council will elect new leadership under the new charter, leadership that better represents our reformed values. The announcement shocked everyone. High Counselors typically served for life. Vrekthorn's voluntary retirement was unprecedented. As Vrekthorn left the chamber, he stopped at Earth section. He looked at Walsh, and something in his reptilian features might have been respect. Your people taught us humility, Ambassador Walsh. That is a rare gift. I hope you use your newfound influence wisely. We'll do our best, Counselor, Walsh replied. That's all anyone can do. 1 year after the standoff, Captain Bennett received orders to lead a special convoy. It consisted of ships from 12 different species, all working together to establish a joint colony on a world in neutral space. It would be the first truly multi-species settlement, a place where beings from across the galaxy would live and work side by side. It was an experiment, and many doubted it would work. But it was a necessary experiment. The Titan's Reach led the convoy, with Captain Morrison's Resolute Dawn flying alongside. As they approached the planet, Bennett stood on his bridge with his original senior officers. Commander Jake Morrison had returned for the occasion, taking leave from his patrol duties. Lieutenant Amy Walsh had come from the Nexus Point. Dr. Paul Martinez was there, coordinating the scientific surveys of the New World. Even Lieutenant Kevin Blake, who had transferred to train security forces on New Terra, had rejoined them. Feels like old times, Morrison said, looking around the bridge. Better times, Bennett corrected. We're not facing down an enemy fleet. We're building something instead of just defending. That's progress. The planet appeared on the view screen, a beautiful world with blue oceans and green continents. It looked remarkably like Earth, which seemed appropriate. This was humanity's gift to the galaxy in a way. Not weapons or ships, but an idea. The idea that different species could work together as equals. That strength didn't have to mean dominance. That cooperation was stronger than control. As the convoy entered orbit, Walsh received a transmission from the Nexus Point. She read it and smiled. Captain, the Council has named the planet. They're calling it New Horizon. Appropriate, Bennett said. That's what this is. A new beginning for all of us. The landing operations began, with ships from a dozen species ferrying equipment and personnel to the surface. Humans worked alongside Keltharians, Patharians, and species whose names Bennett still struggled to pronounce. There were challenges, of course. Communication difficulties, cultural misunderstandings, different environmental needs, but everyone worked through them with patience and good humor. That evening, Bennett stood on the surface of New Horizon, watching the